Hi, I'm Miss Tammy, and it's story time. Today I'm going to tell you a story I made up for my son when he was 2 years old. Way back in 1984. I know, right? It's called The Wrinkly Nana. Once upon a time, as all good stories start, there was a handsome prince named Christopher, and he lived in a beautiful castle by the wide River Swed. Everybody that knew Prince Christopher loved him. He was handsome and kind and funny and charming, but the best part was he had the softest heart. One night, this nasty, rainy, sleety, snowy, yucky, cold night, a little raggedy old lady knocked on the door at the castle kitchen. The door squeaked open. And the maid said, "What do you want?" The little lady said, "Please, can I maybe just come in and get warm by your fire for a little bit and maybe have a crust of bread?" Maid didn't see any harm in that. So she led her inside, and the old lady sat beside the fire, nibbling her crust of bread. Prince Christopher happened to be sneaking through the kitchen at that time to get his midnight cookie snack, and he saw this lump of dirty clothes. And he walked over to investigate it, and it wasn't a lump of dirty clothes at all. There was a lady in the middle of it. And he got to talking to her and invited her to sit down and fed her a big bowl of steaming hot stew and bread and butter and milk. And as they were talking, she explained to him that she had not slept in 20 years and she was just really tired and cold. And she had heard of his kindness and thought maybe at least for one night she could be warm. Well, that melted Prince Christopher's heart, and he had the maids draw a great big bubble bath upstairs, and she headed off upstairs very happily. And after she was properly tubbed and scrubbed and was all pink and sparkly and smelling good, they wrapped her in a warm woolen gown and a warm fluffy robe and gave her fluffy slippers. And then they led her to the finest guest chamber in the castle. Prince Christopher opened the door for her. He said, "I hope you sleep well tonight." And she thanked him and thanked him and thanked him. And Prince Christopher smiled and went back to his room to go to bed. Well, he had just gotten to sleep and he heard snoring. Prince Christopher smiled to himself and rolled back over and tried to go back to sleep. But before he could, there was all kinds of screaming and yelling and banging. "I can't sleep on these wrinkles. It's wrinkled, I can't sleep on wrinkles." What are they going to do? Prince Christopher got up and raced down the hallway, grabbed the maid, and had them remake the bed extra tight. He even had them iron the sheets while they were on the bed so they were warm and stiff when the old lady got back into the bed. And he said, "Good night, Nana. Good night, Your Majesty." He smiled, and as he was walking down the hall, she was already snoring before he got to his room. Prince Christopher giggled a little bit as he slid back into his own bed. But before he could go to sleep, she was shrieking again. "I can't sleep on these wrinkles. I hate wrinkles, I can't sleep." Prince Christopher thought, "Boy, I better do something, because nobody's going to get to sleep tonight in this castle." So he grabbed 4 of his biggest, strongest, bravest knights and had each one of them grab a corner of the sheet, dig their heels in, and lean back as far as they could. That sheet was stretched so tight it was like a trampoline. Boing, 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 boing. The old lady climbed on the sheet, laid her head on the pillow, and immediately began to. Prince Christopher shook his head and smiled and headed back to his room. But before he could get to the door, he heard the old woman shrieking again, "Wrinkles! I can't sleep on wrinkles. I hate wrinkles." Well, Prince Christopher's patient and kind and funny, but he does have his limit, and everybody needs their sleep. He knew what he had to do. He marched back into her bedroom, grabbed one of his knights, and said, "All right, Go get the old wizard Ernie. Oh, they didn't want to do it because Ernie was really an old grouch, especially when you woke him up in the middle of a cold, dark night. He lived in the far north tower. So the knight went over and knocked on the door of the grumpy old wizard after he had climbed 15 flights of twisty-turny stairs. The old wizard opened the door. Whoa. Why are you waking me up? The knight said, I'm sorry, but Prince Christopher has an emergency and he needs you right now. Fine, said the old wizard. And he put on his pointy wizard hat with all the moons and stars. And he put on his red and white striped fluffy bathrobe. And he put on his bunny slippers. And he grumbled and he groaned as he walked all the way down the 15 flights of twisty-turny stairs. He griped and he grumbled and grouched and growled all the way across the courtyard and all the way up the stairs to the finest guest chamber in the entire castle where the old lady was sleeping, or trying to. He walked in and he said, Prince Christopher, I was in the middle of a really good dream. And Prince Christopher said, I'm sorry, but Ernie, I need you to do some magic. And he told the old wizard the story. He said, let me look at her. Come here, lady. So the little Nana toddled over to him, and he looked her up and down. He looked at her between her big toe and her second toe, and grumbled a little bit. He looked in her ear, and he pinched her nose. And then he took a deep breath. I know what it is. He reached into his velvet bag, a little bitty tiny velvet bag like this, put in 2 fingers, and he pulled out a little plank of wood. Well, he blew on it, shook it, and threw it. And when that little plank of wood landed on the floor, it turned into the most amazing machine Christopher had ever seen. It had ropes, and it had barrels, and it had handles, and it spun, and had cogs. It was crazy looking. And then the old wizard reached back into his little bitty bag and pulled out this big vial full of purple liquid with green polka dots. He looked at the maid. He goes, take her behind that screen over there and rub that on her body. So the maid took the vial and rubbed the elixir all over the old lady's body, put her gown back on her. She came back out. He said, sit on that thing over there. He pointed at that contraption. So she sat on it, then she laid down, and he hooked her up to it, and he pressed some buttons, and he turned some cranks and handles, and she started to stretch out a little bit. And then he said, that's enough. And the room was filled with pink smoke. When the pink smoke disappeared, so had the great big machine. And they were just standing there looking at each other kind of funny. He said, all right, go to sleep. The lady said, that was it? He said, trust me. So she climbed into bed. She put her head on the pillow. And before anybody could say another thing, we all heard the... The old wizard Ernie looked at Prince Christopher and said, see, it's done. Prince Christopher said, oh, no. I've been through this before. Just wait. She's going to wake up. So they waited. And they waited. And they waited. And she didn't wake up. The old wizard looked at Prince Christopher and said, told you I know my business. Can I go back to bed now? Prince Christopher thanked the wizard. And the wizard turned his bunny shoes toward the door and marched his way out down the stairs, grumbling all the way across the courtyard and grumbling and griping all the way up the 15 flights of winding stairs in the far north tower. Prince Christopher headed to his room. Something interesting had happened. All of a sudden, the snores made him very sleepy. It made everyone sleepy. Her snores were so special after the wizard had put that lotion on her that it made everybody go to sleep when they heard her snore. Everybody slept all night beautifully. They woke up feeling better than they had ever in their entire lives. Christopher thought, I should probably keep this old lady around. I feel great. So at breakfast, he invited Nana to become the royal Nana and take care of all the children that ever come through the castle. And that's what happened. They lived happily ever after, and they slept good every night because they were serenaded with Nana's special magical snores. The end. I hope you like my story. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.